Welcome back to Le Crime Noir. Before we get started, please feel free to comment and share where you're tuned in from. I love seeing every message. If dark and eerie tales resonate with you, remember to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. A brief reminder, you'll see 3 advertisements during the opening 10 minutes. Once those are over, the full video will play without any further ads, letting you drift off into a calm sleep. Now, get comfortable, clear your thoughts, allow the world outside to slip away, and let's begin. Story 1. A few years ago, I stopped at a local cafe before work the way I always did. Same place, same routine, same tired crowd. I didn't go there for the coffee so much as the quiet. It was one of those mornings where my brain felt slow and heavy, like I was moving through the first hour of the day underwater. I was sitting at a small table with my drink when I noticed someone watching me. At first, I thought it was nothing. People stare sometimes without realizing they're doing it. But then I looked up again and saw him clearly. A man in his 30s, maybe, sitting a few feet away. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't distracted. He had his eyes fixed on me like I was the only thing in the room that mattered. His expression was tight, almost annoyed, like he was trying to remember something and couldn't. I glanced down again, then back up. He was still watching. I did the awkward, polite thing. I gave a small smile, the kind you do when you're trying to signal that you've noticed, and you'd like the other person to stop. Then I looked away, hoping it would end there. It didn't. When I looked up again, he was still staring, not shifting his eyes, not pretending he wasn't, just staring straight at me like it was his right. For a moment, I wondered if I had something on my face. Coffee, lipstick, a smear of something. I wiped at my mouth without thinking. Then, because the quiet discomfort was turning into anger, I finally spoke. "Excuse me," I said. "Is there something I can help you with?" He blinked like I'd pulled him out of a trance. "Oh, sorry," he said. "I just thought you looked familiar." He paused, then looked at my face again more carefully. Not in a friendly way, in a studying way. "I've definitely seen you before," he said slowly. He stood up and walked toward me, and my body tensed immediately. He didn't ask if he could come closer. He just did. Then he pulled out his phone and started typing something in, scrolling for a while, his thumb moving fast. "Sorry," he said again, adjusting his glasses like he was embarrassed. "This is going to sound strange." He turned the screen toward me. I leaned in, because curiosity wins more often than it should. The page was a funeral company website. I saw a logo at the top, and next to it a button that said something like, "Post an obituary." Under that was a picture, my picture, and my name. And above it, in bold, was one word that made my stomach drop even before my brain fully processed it. Obituary. I stared at it for a second, expecting it to rearrange itself into something else. A different name. A similar face. A mistaken identity. Anything. But it didn't. It was me. The hell? I muttered, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted. "That's not funny." The man looked at me, then at the phone, then at me again, like he was comparing the living version to the one on the screen. "So that has your details on it?" he asked. "That is you in the photo?" "Yeah," I said, and I could hear the tightness in my own voice. "That's my name and photo. When did you see this?" 3, maybe 4 days ago," he said. I reached for the phone without asking. I didn't even realize I was doing it. until my fingers closed around it, but he didn't resist. He let me take it like he'd expected I would. My hands felt clumsy as I read the first lines. She was a kind and thoughtful person, always made time for others. It didn't read like a generic template. It read like someone trying to mimic someone who knew me. Not perfectly, but close enough to crawl under my skin. I looked up at him. "Do you think this is some kind of prank?" "Why would someone do that?" he asked, and his face looked genuinely unsettled. Or at least it looked like that. We stared at the screen together. Then a thought slid into place in my mind, cold and sharp. "Do you think it could be someone I know?" I asked. He made a face. "No clue. Very creepy." My mind started racing. If someone close to me had done it, what did that mean? Was this a threat? Was it a warning? Was someone trying to scare me? Or worse, was someone wishing for it? My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I jumped so hard I nearly knocked my coffee over. I pulled it out and saw my boss's name. Sorry, I said quickly, handing the man his phone back. "I have to get to work. Thanks for showing me." He didn't move right away. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I lied automatically. "I just need to think. Have a good day." I left before he could say anything else because my body wanted distance from him, even if my mind didn't know why yet. I couldn't focus at work. Not at all. Every conversation felt strange. Every laugh sounded forced. My boss's questions felt loaded. Even the way people glanced at me in meetings seemed different, like they knew something I didn't. I kept checking my phone, then my email, then my phone again, as if the obituary might somehow leak into the rest of my life and prove itself true. As soon as my lunch break started, I sat in my car and searched the funeral company name I'd seen on the logo. The site came up easily. I found the obituary again in seconds. It was still there. This time I scrolled all the way down to the bottom. I hadn't looked at the dates earlier. I don't know why. Maybe my brain didn't want to. At the bottom of the page, under the paragraph, were the dates. My birthday, a hyphen, and then a date that made my chest go tight. Today. I stared at it until my eyes went blurry. Underneath that, there was one more line. Passed away after an unfortunate accident on the way home. She will be missed. The words looked calm on the screen. Neat. Polite. Final. I felt sick. Then I called the police. They took it seriously enough that it didn't feel like I was being humored. An officer met me, asked questions, took down the website name, and told me to be careful. That evening, one of them walked me home. They checked around the building, checked the street, told me again that if anything felt off, I should call immediately. The obituary page was removed within hours after I reported it. Whether that was the police or the funeral company reacting to the complaint, I don't know, but it disappeared. For a long time after that, I was on edge. I looked over my shoulder when I left work. I checked my mirrors while driving. I double-locked my door at night. Every time a stranger looked at me for an extra second, my stomach tightened. But nothing happened. Days passed, then weeks. Eventually, the fear dulled into something else. Something like a weird story I'd tell at dinner parties when someone asked if anything creepy had ever happened to me. Then years went by. And I forgot about it in the way you forget anything your brain doesn't want to hold. Not truly gone, but buried under newer routines and newer stress. Until one night, I was scrolling on Facebook, and I saw a post that made my blood go cold. Has anyone else found themselves or people they know on this site? There was a screenshot attached, a link underneath. Someone wrote, "Someone showed my sister a fake obituary for herself on this site. It said her date of death was today, and it really freaked her out." Replies stacked under it. A couple of people saying it happened to them too. Others just commenting how disturbing it was. Then I scrolled down further. WTF. This happened to me too. A man showed it to me in a cafe. My stomach tightened. I kept reading. Same. Was the guy wearing glasses? The thread stopped there, like someone had shut it off. The newest comment sat at the bottom, posted only a few hours earlier. Do not give your details to anyone who shows you this site. I gave him my number so he could send the link and offered to walk me home. Then he kept appearing near my house and following me at night. I don't think I'm the only one. My hands went cold. Suddenly, the whole thing made sense in a way that turned my skin tight. He was the one posting them. He was using the obituaries as an excuse to approach women in public, to get them to confirm their name and face, to make them feel off balance and scared, to find out where they lived, or at least learn enough to follow them later. And I realized something that made me feel even worse. He hadn't even needed to say much to me that morning. He hadn't threatened me. He hadn't pushed. He hadn't demanded anything. He just stared. And I was the one who spoke first. Story 2. I only ever heard about her in pieces. Hushed whispers when my mother thought I wasn't listening. Brief conversations where her name would come up and then disappear again, like saying it too long might invite something in. She was never around for me to meet. Still, my mother only ever said good things about her, when she said anything at all. From what I understood, Mama Madame LeBeau was peculiar. Uncle Tommy still rows down to the swamps of Louisiana to see her, even now. He says she's still spry, still sharp, and as far as I know, she's 98 years old. Every holiday and every birthday, without fail, Mama Madame LeBeau sends me a handmade talisman. I've collected them over the years and kept them in a shoebox on the top shelf of my closet. Little dolls made of straw, cedar, oak, and stone. They all give off a spicy smell, like burnt sugar mixed with pepper and smoke. My father used to say there was no point meeting her anyway, 'cause my mother looked just like her. All you had to do was look at Mom, and it was like looking at Mama Madame LeBeau. I'd try to picture my mother with silver hair and deep wrinkles. I'd try to imagine her laugh in an older voice. But I could never make it fully real in my head. It stayed blurry and mysterious. What made it stranger was the fact that my mother didn't have a single photo of Mama Madame LeBeau. Uncle Tommy didn't either. I had never seen a photo of my mother as a child. We had family portraits and random snapshots of birthdays and Christmases, so it didn't make sense that the past just wasn't there, like it had been erased clean. I was 14 when everything broke. A drunk driver, distracted by their phone, crashed into my parents while they were going through a green light. Nobody told me much about how they died. Not details, not images, just that the damage was catastrophic, that the doctors tried, that it was bad. I sat with Uncle Tommy in the hospital for what felt like forever, watching clocks move and hearing nurses speak quietly in the hallways until the news came that their condition had worsened. Then, moments after that, both of my parents slipped away. I didn't know how to exist after that. The days became a numb blur. I ate when someone put food in front of me. I slept when my body shut down. I moved through everything like a robot pretending to be a person. Uncle Tommy moved into our house to handle affairs and make sure I was taken care of until they decided what to do with me long term. I assumed I'd stay with him. He was family. He was there. He was the only thing I had left. But my parents' wills said something else. If they both died, I was to go to Mama Madame LeBeau. I didn't understand why. I didn't understand why Uncle Tommy couldn't just keep me. He told me he worked on oil rigs. He said he couldn't care for me without quitting his job, and quitting his job would destroy everything he'd built. He didn't say it harshly, but it felt harsh anyway. Not long after, Uncle Tommy sold our house. We packed up a truck, and I watched from the curb as pieces of my parents' life went away. Some things got sold. Some things got donated. Some things got thrown out. And I clutched the small bag of belongings I was allowed to keep like it was all that proved they'd ever existed. Uncle Tommy didn't tell me anything about Mama Madame LeBeau during the entire drive from Minnesota to Louisiana. Not one real detail. Not one story that helped. It was like he was keeping secrets locked tight. Like meeting her was the only way I was allowed to know her. I tried asking, but he always gave me nothing answers. She's family. You'll see. Don't worry. We weren't in a hurry. If anything, it felt like he was stalling, taking longer routes, stopping more than we needed, stretching the drive like he was trying to delay the inevitable. But you can't delay forever. Eventually, we pulled into New Orleans, and we stopped in front of a gumbo and catfish diner called Madame LeBeau's. The diner was set in an old triangular Creole cottage right in the middle of modern noise. It looked like a different century dropped into the street by mistake. Warm wood, wide porch, tall windows, the kind of place that looked like it had stories in its walls. On one side were new bars with neon signs. On the other side were nicer restaurants. Across the street were little old shops that looked like they belonged beside it, like they'd survived together. Jazz spilled out of the open doors and windows. Fast, lively, bright. A live band played in the corner on a small stage, and the sound made my body feel awake for the first time in weeks, like the music grabbed my bones and shook them. Uncle Tommy led me up the porch stairs, past outdoor tables, into the lobby and to the counter. He spoke casually to the woman up front like they'd known each other for years. Then she looked at me and smiled like she knew me too. I hated that. I hated being recognized by strangers. I hated that my name was already in their mouths. Later I found out she was Cousin Bethany Sue. We walked through rooms filled with customers. The front foyer packed with tables. A left room that used to be a living room. A right room that used to be a library. All of it turned into seating areas. Then down a hallway, past a staircase, into a massive open kitchen with 4 stoves and long counters. Boys ran through the kitchen like lightning, carrying plates and stirring pots, working in a rhythm that felt practiced and old. The air smelled like spices and meat and something sweet underneath it. Uncle Tommy didn't stop. He led me through the back door. Outside, 2 people stood over a huge cast-iron pot, looking down at stew that rolled thick and dark under the ladle. The woman looked up, and I think we gasped at the same time. Mama Madame LeBeau looked just like my mother, Same face, same piercing hazel eyes, same long burgundy hair, twisted into a bun the way my mother used to wear it. If you changed the clothing, if you changed the posture, it would have been like seeing my mom standing there. Except Mama's body was fuller, more curve in the hips and chest, a thicker stomach. My mother had been thin and quiet and always smiling, like her joy came easily. Mama's smile felt heavier. Not sad exactly, but loaded. The most unbelievable thing wasn't that she looked like my mother, it was that she didn't look old. Not even a little. She didn't look 98. She didn't look 50. She didn't even look 30. She looked like she was in her early 20s. Perfect skin, smooth and creamy in the morning light. Not a wrinkle, not sagging, not a single sign of age. Even her hands, when she moved them, didn't look like old hands. I stared at Uncle Tommy. He looked older than she did. His face was tired, lined from work and sun and stress. Standing next to her, he looked like the parent, and she looked like the child. It didn't make sense. My brain tried to argue against what my eyes were seeing, but my eyes refused to cooperate. Mama smiled, set the ladle back in the pot, and walked to Uncle Tommy. She held his face in both hands, lifted her chin, and kissed his cheeks, then his forehead. Then she pressed her forehead to his and whispered something under her breath, a chant in a language I didn't know. She pulled back and looked into his eyes like she was reading him. Then she turned to me and fell to her knees, so we were face to face. She took my cheeks in her hands. Her palms were warm, and her fingers were strong. She shook her head slowly, amazed, and I understood what she was seeing. The same face again. Her face. My mother's face. My face. It was like looking at an older sister, not a grandmother. She kissed my cheeks, then my forehead, and drew me into her arms. She whispered another chant, Creole. The same kind of language my mom would slip into when she was upset. When she finally let go, she stood and pulled Uncle Tommy aside. They spoke in low voices. I didn't catch words, only tone. Uncle Tommy looked stiff. Mama looked calm. I wandered toward the other person by the pot, a man stirring with a long wooden paddle. The stew rolled and turned with each slow movement. Do you want to try some?" he asked. His accent was so thick I almost didn't understand him. I had never had gumbo before. I nodded. He grabbed a clean spoon, dipped it into the pot, and handed it to me. "It's hot," he warned. I blew on it and tasted it. It was better than anything I'd ever eaten. Spicy and rich, sausage and crab and something deep that made it feel like the food had history. My mouth filled with heat and flavor, and I actually smiled, real and surprised. When I looked up, Uncle Tommy was walking toward me. "Let's unpack," he said quietly. "Get you settled before I have to leave." I nodded, and my chest tightened at the reminder that he was leaving. We got my bags from the car and walked across the yard behind the diner to a smaller cottage on the same property. Inside, the house smelled like incense and sage. It made my nose tingle. The air felt thick with it, like the walls had absorbed it over years. Uncle Tommy led me upstairs to a room under a triangular ceiling. A queen-size bed sat against the back wall. The bed frame was metal. The mattress looked old. The room was mostly empty. "Mama will furnish it more once she knows what you like," Uncle Tommy said, setting my bags on the bed. When I sat down, the springs groaned loudly under my weight. "It's an old bed," he added quickly. "I'm sure she'll get you something better." I nodded and forced a small smile. He patted my back, kissed the top of my head, told me goodbye, and left to catch his flight. Then I was alone. I unpacked slowly, folding clothes into piles because there weren't drawers. Shirts in one stack, pants in another, socks and underwear in a messy pile, shoes lined up neatly like I could create order even if my life didn't have any. A knock came at the door. Ma Madame LeBeau stood there smiling. "You got the LeBeau genes in you, just like your mama," she said, laughing as she walked in and sat on my bed. "This rickety old thing. I never expected anyone to sleep on it again. We'll get you something better." She looked at me, cross-legged on the floor, staring. "I got lots of photos of you over the years," she said, "and seeing you in person." Her eyes turned sad for a moment. "You got your beauty from your mama." Then her voice hardened into practicality. "I'm going to homeschool you," she said. "And you're going to work in my diner, serve customers. You'll see it ain't as bad as it sounds. You'll have a good time." She stood and wiped her hands on her apron. "Come down when you're ready. We'll show you around." Then she left. I waited until the restaurant quieted down out front, until I could hear the chatter fade and the music slow. When I finally went downstairs, I heard voices coming from Ma's house, not the diner. I moved quietly, like I was already learning to be careful here. In her living room, I saw a man lying on the hardwood floor in the center of a circle of black sand. Mama stood over him. A large snake was coiled around her shoulders and arm, its head lowering to slide across the man's chest. I watched, frozen, as Mama moved to a table filled with jars and bowls and tools. She crushed herbs in a mortar, mixed powders, and a blue puff of smoke rose up like it was alive. She carried the bowl back and sprinkled the powder over the man's body. Then she took a bowl of thick crimson liquid, blood, it looked like blood, and brushed it over his face and hands like paint. She lit a bundle of lavender sage and waved it over him, smoke pouring down and spreading like a fog. She began chanting in Creole. Her scarf and robe shifted as she moved. Shadows on the walls seemed to twist with her, not just flickering from candlelight, but moving like they had shape and intention. The white smoke turned bluish as it rose back up toward her in waves, like the air itself was being pulled. When the candles burned down to nothing, the man stood up. He hugged Mama like she'd saved him. He said things I couldn't hear. Mama kissed his cheeks and forehead and whispered another chant. Then he walked out the front door like he'd just had a normal appointment. I tried to slip away, heart pounding, but Mama's voice cut through the house. She called my name. I stepped into the room, swallowed hard, and waited for her to yell. She handed me a broom. "If you can watch the ceremony," she said, "you can clean up after it." I swept the black sand and returned it where she told me. I collected wax and broken candle stubs. I noticed her couch was wrapped in plastic, and underneath it, the leather looked perfect, untouched. I couldn't imagine sitting on plastic in that heat. But suddenly, comfort didn't seem like the priority in this house. When the room was clean again, Mama sighed and smiled at me. "Now you got 2 jobs," she said. "You're going to be waiting tables in the diner, and you're going to be cleaning up after my nightly work." "What is your nightly work?" I asked, because the question had been burning in me since I saw the snake sliding over that man's chest. Mama chuckled. "Deep magic, child," she said. "Voodoo. A relationship with the other side, a correspondence with the voodoo man." She spoke like it was a fact, like saying it didn't require belief. "You'll learn," she said. "Just like your mama did, just like Tommy did." They ran from it. Her eyes sharpened. "Now it's your turn. It's in our blood." Then she kissed my cheeks and forehead in that same ritual way and disappeared into her own room. I didn't go upstairs immediately. I walked around her living room, staring at the things she kept out in the open like they were normal. Bookcases full of supernatural texts, some in languages I couldn't read, shelves lined with jars and vials. One jar held something that looked like an embryo floating in thick yellow liquid. Another held tiny baby bats posed with wings stiff and spread like decorations. I saw jars of colored gloop, containers of salves, vials of powder, sacks of colored sand, handmade dolls like the talismans in my closet. There were terrariums, too. Snakes, dart frogs with neon backs, dead insects suspended in glass, an empty aquarium that held rats scrambling over each other like they didn't belong in something meant for fish. In one corner stood a cedar pedestal carved with runes. On top was an open book with a cover that felt like dried leather, flesh brown, edges curled with age. The pages were yellowed, stained, filled with recipes and ritual instructions. My eyes landed on one section and stuck. Young forever, ever living life. I thought about Mama's face, about her skin, about the way she looked 22. I read the ingredients listed for the ritual. The first one was blood from a newborn infant. My stomach turned. I stopped reading, hands trembling, and went upstairs. That night I tossed and turned on the old bed, the springs screeching with every movement, the metal frame rattling like it couldn't handle a living body anymore. When I stayed still, the smell of incense and spices wrapped around me until I felt like I was breathing smoke. Before sunrise, I went downstairs for air. Mama was already outside on the porch with a cup of coffee, leaning on the railing, watching morning arrive like she owned it. Wind chimes made of small bones click softly, and I noticed shrunken heads hanging beneath the gutters like strange decorations. Mama looked at me and smiled, flawless. "How about you and I go get breakfast started?" she said. We walked to the diner together as the sun crept up over the horizon. And that was how my life became two lives at once. By day, I worked the diner. Mama made me gut frogs, take out their hearts, collect organs in bowls. She served frog hearts alongside catfish and hush puppies like it was the most normal menu item in the world. She told me the customers knew. She told me it was written on the menu, like that made it less horrifying. By night, I cleaned up after rituals. I watched women come in crying and leave smiling. I watched Mama cut people open and then seal them back together with gold thread and smoke and chanting. I watched snakes burrow into flesh like it was water. I watched shadows move wrong in candlelight. And slowly, against everything I thought I believed, I started believing in it too. I didn't want to. I told myself I was just scared, that my brain was trying to make sense of something it couldn't. But then the woman with the fertility ritual came back months later, holding a healthy baby boy, and there was no way to pretend that was coincidence. I asked Mama if she was immortal. She told me yes. She told me she had done the spell, and she would live unless killed by a cursed object. I asked her about the newborn blood. She smiled like she'd been waiting for the question. She told me hospitals dispose of excess blood after tests. She told me she bought what would be thrown away. She told me she didn't steal. She didn't harm. That everything she used was animal blood, or blood freely given. Part of me wanted to believe that made it clean. But the book still sat open in my mind like a mouth. The tug to meet the voodoo man grew inside me. Not just curiosity, something deeper. A pull that felt like hunger. And one night, I gave in. I told Mama I wanted immortality. She smiled like she'd known I would. She sat me on the floor in the middle of the living room. She told me not to be afraid and kissed my cheeks and forehead. Then she began the ceremony. Snakes draped over my shoulders and coiled around my limbs. Their bodies moved in slow ripples, and my skin crawled under them like my nerves didn't know what to do with the sensation. She made me drink something blue that smelled like cardamom and vinegar. She marked my face with her own blood, drawing runes for protection. She circled me with blue sand, threw ash over my body, and filled the room with sage smoke until the air became thick and heavy. Then my world went dark. Not normal dark, not eyelids shut. Dark like everything had been erased. I sat in that darkness with snakes still moving over me, their cold weight a reminder that I was still in a body. A voice whispered close to my ear. "You're heavily guarded," it said. "Are you afraid, child?" It sounded concerned, almost gentle. "No," I said, even though fear was choking me. Red eyes appeared in the smoke, a smile full of teeth, too wide for any human face. And then it was gone, circling me without being seen, sliding across my skin like a presence that could touch without having hands. "Why have you come to me?" the voice asked. "I am a LeBeau," I said, voice shaking. "And I want immortality." Laughter poured through the dark like something spilling out of a cracked container. "What will you give me?" it asked. "What do you want?" I whispered. "I want your eternity," it said. "Immortality for your eternity. You will not die except by a cursed object. And if you do die, you will come to me. A fair trade. You will work for me." I tried to find the catch in the words. I tried to be smart. "Will I be young forever?" I asked. "At 22, you will stop aging," it said. "You will surpass humanity tenfold unless an enemy knows your weakness." I didn't think any further than the word immortality. "I want it," I said. "Then go make me a stew," the voice replied. And suddenly I was back in the living room with Mama. A cauldron was set over the fire. Ingredients appeared on the table. Some I recognized, some I didn't. Some I couldn't even look at without wanting to run. Mama moved fast, focused, like she was feeding something she respected and feared at the same time. When it was ready, she handed me the ladle. She told me to eat 3 bites. The voodoo man would take the rest. I swallowed things that tasted like copper and bitter herbs, with strange hints of nutmeg and boiled cabbage. My throat tightened with each bite, as if my body knew I was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. When it was done, Mama held me against her chest like she was hugging a child. "We will live on and on," she whispered. "We will make a family that lasts forever." Years passed. I worked the diner. I learned more rituals. I learned what Mama taught and what she didn't. I grew older, I married. I opened another Madame LeBeau's diner outside the city, closer to the swamps. I filled my life with snakes and frogs and things that lived half in water and half on land. I even took in an alligator named Kohan who slept in my living room when he wasn't out in the swamp. Uncle Tommy visited when he came to see Mama, always with that guarded look in his eyes like he still didn't want to talk about certain things. I told my husband I would live far past him, and he accepted it, like you accept weather you can't change. My children worked the diner too. They helped clean up the rituals. I let them see everything, the way Mama let me see everything, so they could decide for themselves whether they wanted to belong to the voodoo man. Because that's the truth Mama never said plainly at the start. You don't just inherit the face in this family. You inherit the door. And once you learn how to open it, the other side never stops watching to see who will step through next. Story 3. When I went to the market this morning, I heard them say they were going to burn Catherine at dawn. Men were already carrying wood through the street, as if they were moving furniture, as if it was just another chore that needed doing. No one sounded surprised. No one sounded sickened. People spoke about it the way they speak about weather. I was 9 the first time I saw a witch burned. Even now, years later, it is the one thing I can never fully lose. Other memories blur at the edges. Faces change, voices fade. But that day stayed sharp, like it was carved into me. Poor Mary. They tied her hands and dragged her across the empty field. The whole village had gathered, men, women, even children. No one tried to stop it. They said Mary practiced witchcraft. They said she brought bad luck to the village. That summer, 3 old women died, and that was enough. It didn't matter that old women die every summer. It didn't matter that illness comes and goes. The village wanted a reason, and Mary fit the shape of it. They dragged her, while people followed behind, some shouting, some laughing, some throwing whatever they had in their hands. Stones, dirt, rotten fruit. The air felt loud and tight, like everyone had been waiting for permission to release something ugly they'd carried too long. Mary kept shouting, but her words didn't stay whole. They broke. They twisted. Sometimes her voice changed halfway through a sentence, turning into something thin and raw. That was the moment I understood something, even as a child. It could be anyone. All it takes is one bad season, one rumor, one mistake, and the village decides. Mary had come to our house when she was 13. She was my mother's maid then. After my mother died giving birth to me, Mary stayed. Slowly, she became the one who raised me. She was kind to me, gentle in a way adults often aren't with children they didn't choose. She was beautiful, too, but not in the loud way people notice at fairs. Beautiful in a quiet way, like a warm lamp in a dark room. Father used to say she was useful. Sometimes I tried to convince myself that was kindness coming from him. Or maybe he had meant it as a compliment. But looking back, I think Mary went to him at night the same way she used to come to me and tell bedtime stories. I remember the way she held my hand at the market. Tightly, like she was afraid I might disappear. That is where she met him. The boy with green eyes. His father was a butcher. Mary would stand by the stall and talk to him for long stretches, long enough for me to get bored and drift away. When I wandered, I would go play with his sisters, Catherine and Josephine. Catherine was my age. Josephine was younger, small and eager, always trying to keep up with us. Catherine was the one I really liked. She was quick with jokes and had a steady gaze that made you feel safe, like she could handle whatever came. And now they are going to burn Catherine, my childhood friend, at dawn. When Granny found out Mary was pregnant, she wasn't happy. At first, she didn't shout. She didn't throw things. She didn't make a scene. She went quiet. Her face became still, and that was worse than anger. Quiet meant she was thinking. Quiet meant she was choosing what to do. Father was different. He got angry in a loud, bright way. His face turned red. His blue eyes looked colder than usual. Mary stood in front of them with her hands folded and her head lowered, saying nothing. That was also the time Father was preparing to marry again. A new woman was coming to the house. Granny said it was necessary. No one asked me how I felt. No one asked if I wanted a stranger in my mother's place. They acted like I was a piece of furniture that would adjust. One night, Mary came into my room while I was sleeping. Or maybe I woke when she touched my shoulder. I can't fully remember the beginning, only the feeling of her face close to mine in the dark. Her eyes looked different that night. Not frightened, not pleading, decided. "I'm going away," she whispered. "With John." I knew who John was. The boy with green eyes. But I think I already knew before she said it. Because of the raven. The red-eyed raven came to me in my sleep sometimes. It never spoke with the words. It showed things instead, like pictures, like scenes placed in front of me. When I was younger, it used to turn into my mother's portrait in the living room, the one hanging on the wall above the fireplace. I would dream of it shifting, the paint moving as if the canvas were breathing. But that night, the portrait didn't look like my mother anymore. It looked like Mary. Older, sad, and something else in her expression that I didn't understand yet. After Mary left my room, I couldn't sleep. The house felt too big, too empty, like the walls had moved farther away. So I went to Granny's room and told her Mary wasn't there. I didn't like sleeping alone, especially not when Mary was gone. Mary didn't run away. Not really. They brought her back. I don't know who found her or how. One day she was gone, and then suddenly she was in the house again, but it wasn't the same. They locked her in one of the back rooms. Granny told everyone Mary was sick. "She has something that spreads," Granny said. "No one is to go near her." No one questioned it. No one tried to see her. No one insisted on proof. People are strangely obedient when fear is offered to them. But I knew she wasn't sick. The raven came again, quiet and still beside me in the dream. Then it showed me something I didn't understand at first. A baby, very small, wrapped in cloth, sleeping like a little bundle of breath. I leaned closer in the dream, and the baby opened its eyes. They were blue. After that, Mary was not in the locked room anymore. Father said she went back to her village. He said it like it was a decision made for everyone's benefit. One evening, I heard Father talking to Granny. Their voices were low, careful. Father said he had sent the child away. "To a friend," he said. "They'll take care of him till he's old enough." He spoke like it was practical, like it was a spare animal being moved to another barn. After a month, whispers began. At the market, at the well, between servants. Mary's name started rising again, but not kindly. They said the crops were failing. They said animals were getting sick. They said something felt wrong in the village. Someone always has to be the reason. One morning, Father said it plainly, like he was reading a letter. They've accused Mary of witchcraft. He didn't look surprised. Granny didn't either. Winter came early that year, cold and quiet. And with the cold came more news. Mary's father died. They said it was heartbreak. Only her little brother, Peter, was left. He came to our house after that, a quiet boy with sharp eyes, and became a helper in exchange for food and shelter. Time passed. Things became quiet again. Too quiet. Now I am 15. Lizzie, my stepmother, arranged a birthday celebration for me. A big one. Lights, food, music, people laughing like nothing bad had ever happened in this house. Like women hadn't been locked away, like children hadn't been sent off, like names hadn't been burned in fields. At first, Lizzie was neither kind nor cruel, just distant. She treated me like something she'd inherited. But after she lost her baby the third time, she changed. She became softer, kinder. Not because she suddenly loved me, because she wanted something. And I knew the raven had shown me why. These days, the raven shows me what to bury, what to burn, what to whisper. It shows me where things are hidden. It shows me what people pretend isn't happening. It shows me the places where truth is stored like a knife. That night at the celebration, I saw Catherine near the back garden. Peter was with her. They were talking quietly, heads close together. The lantern light cut their faces into warmth and shadow. And I knew. The raven had shown me before. The same cold warning sliding under my ribs. Catherine is going to burn. Things happened quickly after that. Too quickly, like the village had been hungry and only needed a name. One morning, people started whispering Catherine's name. By afternoon, they were saying it out loud. By evening, everyone believed it. Someone said they saw her walking alone at night. Someone said animals avoided her. Someone said she looked at people the wrong way. That was enough. The next day they claimed they found things in her yard. Bundles of herbs tied with thread. Ash pressed into shapes. Iron nails. All the items that make people feel justified when they want to hurt someone. And I remembered something then. The raven had shown me Peter nights before, digging, burying something carefully in the dark, his movements slow and practiced like it wasn't the first time. When they came to take Catherine, Peter was there with the others, standing among them, silent. His face didn't change. But his eyes held something that reminded me of Mary's eyes that night in my room. Not fear, decision. That night the raven came again. It showed me a man, older, dressed in dark clothes with 2 graves behind him, 2 dead wives. It showed me Lizzie next, smiling softly, hands gentle, eyes calculating. Then it showed me a wedding. Mine. The man at the altar was Lizzie's cousin. That is when I understood why Lizzie became kind. She wasn't soft because she cared. She was soft because she needed me to become obedient. She needed me to become easy to move like a piece on a board. And once I understood that, I understood something else too. Lizzie has to go. Quickly. After that, the raven showed me more, as it always does. What to bury, what to burn, what to whisper, where to find things, and how to make them appear in the right place at the right time. I remembered what the raven showed me the night Father said the blue-eyed baby had been sent away. Near the big tree in the garden, Father had dug a small hole. and buried something carefully, covering it with earth the way you tuck in a child for sleep. The raven perched above, watching in silence. Now I know where to find what is needed for Lizzie, for what is coming. Story 4. I need to ask something before I get into this. I can't be the only one who hates the current state of the government, right? Surely I'm not the only one watching everything fall apart and thinking, what are these people doing? This has been sitting in the background of my mind for a long time. I hate it, but most days I do what everyone does. I complain a little. I joke about it. I scroll past another headline that makes me tired in a new way. And I keep going because what else can you do? Lately, because of recent events, take your pick, I've been more vocal about it, more angry, less careful, and I think it's going to get me killed. Worse than that, I think it's going to get other people killed too. And I need to say this as clearly as I can. It was not me. I didn't do what it looks like I did. I don't want to go into every detail that led up to the moment I finally snapped and started ranting to my girlfriend on the phone. But I had some very strong words about a certain political figure. Not I disagree with them words. Real anger. The kind you don't normally say out loud because you know how those words sound once they leave your mouth. I went off about everything. Some files, some wars. The whole feeling of being trapped in late-stage capitalism, watching people suffer while the same names keep getting richer. I'm not proud of how intense I got, but I'm also not going to pretend I was calm. My girlfriend was responding with that same energy. She wasn't shutting me down. She wasn't telling me to relax. She was right there with me. And then mid-sentence, her voice got cut off. Static washed over the call like someone dumped white noise into the line. At first, I assumed it was bad reception. I did the usual thing. Hello? Can you hear me? Babe? The static didn't change. It didn't crackle like a weak signal. It sounded thick and flat like it was being played on purpose. That's when I noticed something else. My phone was hot. Not, it's been in my pocket, hot. It felt like it was about to burst. The heat was coming through the case and into my palm, and I had this stupid thought that it was going to burn my skin. Then the screen went black. My phone had been fully charged. I'd charged it earlier. I was sure. But when it came back on for a second, it only showed the dead battery icon before shutting off again. Just like that. It was a brick. I stood there staring at it, trying to make sense of how a phone can drop from full battery to dead in a matter of seconds. I plugged it in, planning to call my girlfriend back immediately and tell her something weird just happened. Before the charger even clicked fully into place, all the lights in my house shut off at once. Not one room, not a blown bulb. Everything. The hum of the fridge died. The AC cut out. The quiet that followed felt heavy, like the house was holding its breath. That's where my unease crossed into panic. Instead of doing the reasonable adult thing, checking the breaker, calling the electric company from a neighbor's phone, I decided I needed air. I needed to leave the house. My brain said walk it off, like this was anxiety I could outpace. I opened my front door and stepped onto the porch. The first thing I saw was a black Chevrolet Impala parked parallel to my driveway. Tinted windows. I had never seen that car in my neighborhood before. I know my neighbors' cars. I recognize the ones that belong here. That Impala didn't belong. And paired with the timing, Static on my call, phone overheating, power outage. It made my paranoia spike so hard my stomach tightened. I stood on the porch staring at it, waiting for someone to get out. Nobody did. The car just sat there like it had been placed. I went back inside and locked the door. I didn't go for the walk. I didn't even turn on music or light candles or try to pretend this was normal. I sat in my living room in the dark, sweating, and checked the blinds like a man losing his mind. Every few minutes, I'd lift the edge of the blinds and peek out. The Impala never moved. 2 hours, maybe 3. Time got weird without the usual background noise. The air in the house got hotter and thicker. It was 80 degrees outside, and with no AC, the heat built fast. Sweat ran down my temples. My shirt clung to my back. I kept drinking water like it would cool the fear out of me. Still, no movement. No one got out of the car. No one walked up to my door. No headlights flashed. No engine noise. Just that parked black shape with dark windows pointed toward my house like an eye. Feeling trapped in your own home is a special kind of hell. It breaks you slowly. Every minute feels like another test of how long you can sit still without doing something stupid. Eventually, I reached the point where I thought, fine, I'm leaving. Even if it's a mistake, I'd rather be outside than sitting here waiting for whatever comes next. Right as I stood up, the power came back. The house filled with light all at once. The fridge kicked on. The AC restarted with a loud rush. The sudden normal sounds made me feel dizzy, like I'd been underwater and surfaced too fast. And at the exact same moment, the black Impala sped away. It peeled out of the neighborhood like the driver had been waiting for a signal. Tires spun. The car shot down the street and vanished around the corner. I should have felt relief. Instead, my paranoia spiked again because the timing was too perfect. Like it wasn't just coincidence. Like the point had never been to hurt me right then. The point had been to show me they could. My phone turned back on a few minutes later. The screen lit up and dozens of notifications started chiming, one after another, rapid and relentless. They were from my girlfriend. At first I was relieved, then I saw the content and my stomach dropped. Don't say that. This is how you go to prison. You don't have to do this. I love you. Please think about what you're doing. I opened the conversation thread and my jaw literally went slack. She had been replying to texts I had not sent. Not vague arguments, not heated political talk. Full-blown violent threats. Justifications. Names. Dates. Places. Mentions of rallies. Mentions of making them pay. Mentions that sounded like someone building a case against me, sentence by sentence. I scrolled up and down with shaking hands, searching for some sign that I'd blacked out, and typed it, without remembering. Or that my phone had glitched and copied something, or that I'd been hacked in a way that would at least make sense. But these weren't random spam messages. They were written in my tone. They used phrases I use. They referenced things I'd said out loud on the call before the static hit. It was like someone had been listening, then speaking as me. I tried to type back immediately. I tried to explain that I didn't send any of it. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard and I couldn't make myself press the keys. Not because my hands were frozen, but because I had this strong, sick certainty that if I typed the wrong thing, it would get used too, like the conversation itself had become a trap. While I stood there staring at my phone, another sound cut through the room, the download complete chime from my laptop. It was loud enough to make my skin prickle. I hadn't been on my laptop. I hadn't even touched it since earlier in the day. It was sitting closed on the table like it always is when I'm not using it. Slowly, I opened it. The screen lit up. My stomach clenched as I clicked into my downloads. There was a new file. I tried to open it, and my computer hesitated, like it was warning me, like it didn't want to be involved. I clicked again. Still nothing I could understand. It wouldn't open normally, and the more I stared at it, the more I felt like opening it was exactly what someone wanted me to do. But I saw the name clearly. My _ manifesto _ by _ Donovan _ Meeks .exe, that's my name. And an .exe file is not a document. It's not text. It's a program. I don't know what it does because I haven't opened it. I don't know if opening it is the worst thing I could do, or if not opening it is what will ruin me. I don't know if my phone is compromised, if my laptop is compromised, if my entire home network is compromised. All I know is something used my anger and my voice and my name, and it's setting me up for something I never agreed to. So yeah, that's probably not a good sign, right? Story 5. Is that you or is it someone else? I honestly don't know, but I need you to say something. Anything. Because whatever you say, whatever you choose to call it, will land on me and it will change what this becomes. Some stories only turn real after someone speaks back to them. If nobody answers, the story stays like smoke. It drifts, it thins out, and then it's gone. Maybe that's safer. Maybe it's worse. I'm telling you this with my mind open, even though a part of me wishes it could stay closed. I'm telling it in a quiet place, like I'm the only person left awake in my own life. I didn't used to think about any of this. Not like this. Back then, everything felt normal in the way childhood always feels normal. The days were bright, and time moved like it had nowhere important to be. If I close my eyes, I can still see our classroom the way it used to look, and it's strange what my memory chooses to keep. I remember the windows first. They were big, and in my head they're almost too clear, like sheets of glass that didn't just show the outside but let it leak into the room. Sometimes it felt like you could see the whole school through those windows, like the walls weren't fully there, like the building was a picture that could turn transparent if you stared long enough. Outside, on the roof, there was a black cat. She was always there, stretched out in the sun as if the rooftop belonged to her and the school was built around that fact. She didn't look like a stray. She looked clean, calm, certain. She would lie with her eyes half closed, letting the light warm her fur. And she never seemed rushed. A lot of people at school noticed her, but I noticed her too much. My eyes went to her without me choosing it, like she was a word in a sentence that I couldn't stop rereading. Whenever I got closer, when I stepped out into the open and tried to come near, she would run. Not in a panicked way, not scared, just fast, smooth, like she had decided my distance was the right distance and I didn't get to negotiate. 1 second she would be there, a dark shape against the bright roof, and the next she'd slip away, gone behind something I couldn't see from where I stood. It always left me with the feeling that she hadn't run from me so much as she had avoided being seen too clearly. Those days were full of noise and movement. We ran under trees after school, chasing each other down paths where the sun broke into pieces through the leaves. The shade would cool our faces, then a streak of light would hit your eyes and make you squint, and then shade again. My friends were always around me, talking about nothing, laughing at small jokes that didn't need to be remembered. Sometimes we would go to the river, to that bridge where kids always dared each other. We'd be in our swimsuits, standing on the concrete edge with our toes curled over it, feeling brave because everyone else was there to see us be brave. One of my friends always brought a floating ring, bright and rubbery, and he'd swing it around like it made him the captain of whatever we were doing. We would jump in one by one, the shock of cold water snapping the breath out of our lungs, and then we'd pop up laughing, splashing, acting like the river was ours. But even there, even in the middle of that kind of joy, I used to feel something else underneath it. It's hard to explain without making it sound dramatic. It wasn't a scream in my head. It wasn't a clear warning. It was just a strange feeling in the water, like the waves had a mood, like the river knew something it wasn't sharing, and my body could sense it even if my mind didn't have the words. When I floated on my back and stared at the sky, the surface would rock me gently. But sometimes the rocking felt wrong, like a hand moving you when you didn't ask to be moved. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was imagining it, and maybe I was. But every now and then, when the sunlight hit the water a certain way, I'd get the thought that the river was watching me from below, not like a fish watches, not like a person watches, but like something older that had been there before bridges and schools and kids who laughed too loudly. Let me be honest with you before I go further. This story might hold some truth, and it might hold some lies, or maybe it holds truth in the way dreams hold truth, twisted but real in the places that matter. I can't promise every detail is perfect. I can promise that what it carries is what I carry, and whatever it is, it feels important to say it out loud because keeping it inside has started to feel like keeping the door unlocked at night. In the evenings, we would split up and go our separate ways, each taking the route home we knew by heart. It was ordinary. We walked past traffic lights that changed on their own schedule, crossed at zebra crossings where cars slowed down just enough to make you feel both safe and not safe at the same time. The streets were familiar, and that should have been comforting. But that was when the shadows started. At first I thought it was just the way light falls when the sun gets low. I blamed trees, poles, passing cars, anything that could throw a moving shape. Yet I kept seeing shadows that didn't match anything I could point to. A dark streak crossing in front of me when there was no one there. A shape in the corner of my eye that seemed to slide across the pavement, as if someone walked just out of sight. Sometimes, at the edge of my vision, it looked like a person keeping pace beside me. Not fully visible, not solid, just a presence in the shape of a body. And the strange part was that it didn't feel like a stranger was following me. It felt like I was already walking with someone and only just noticed. Is that you or someone else? Are you the one beside me? Silent, matching my steps without making a sound? Or is it something wearing the idea of you using the outline of a person the way a coat is used? Something pulled on to hide what's really underneath? I tried to ignore it because ignoring things is what you do when you want your life to stay normal. But the more I ignored it, the more real it began to feel, not in the eyes, but in the body. You know that feeling when you're alone and you suddenly think someone is behind you. It's like your skin becomes a thin sheet and the air touches it differently. I started getting that feeling even while walking in public, even when cars went by and people were around. I would reach the playground sometimes, the one with the open space and the trees that bordered it like a line of quiet guards. On windy days, those trees would move in a way that made them look restless. Strong gusts would shake the branches, and the leaves would flip and flutter, showing their pale undersides like they were turning their faces away. Then rain would start. Not always heavy, but enough to blur the world. Drops would hit my eyelashes. The path in front of me would smear like a wet painting. Everything would look less sharp, less certain. Streetlights hadn't fully come on yet, and when they did, they weren't bright enough to make the shadows behave. Along that unclear path, faintly lit by fireflies, I saw them. At first, they were just silhouettes, people-shaped shadows moving ahead of me, passing by as if they had somewhere to go. The fireflies blinked in small flashes, and in those flashes the silhouettes seemed to shift. 1 second a figure looked tall, then it looked hunched. 1 second it looked like there were two figures, then it looked like one long shape, dragging itself forward. I told myself they were just people, other kids, adults cutting through the park to get home. That's what parks are for. That's what paths are for. But something in me didn't believe it. The air felt wrong, like it had been held too long in someone's mouth. My steps got faster without me deciding to speed up. I started moving toward the silhouettes, half because I wanted to prove they were normal, and half because I didn't want to be alone with whatever my mind was doing. I ran toward them. And then, as I got close enough for the fireflies' weak light to show more detail, the figures weren't figures anymore. On the grass, right where I expected to find feet and legs and the simple, normal proof of another person, there was a skeleton. Not hidden, not buried, not half-covered. Just there, lying like it had been placed carefully. The bones were pale in the dim light, too pale, almost clean. It didn't look like something from nature. It looked like something arranged, like something left behind on purpose. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like my body had missed a step. I froze for a moment, and I could hear my own breath, loud and rough in my ears. The wind moved through the trees and made the branches knock together softly, a sound like quiet applause. The rain tapped the leaves in the ground, and the fireflies kept blinking as if they didn't care what they lit up. Then something else happened, something I still can't make sense of. My shadow moved. Not the way a shadow moves when you move. Not the way it shifts when the light changes. It moved like it had its own plan, like it was done copying me. It pulled away, stretching in a direction my body wasn't facing, as if it wanted to run first. And then it did. Or at least that's what it felt like. My mind couldn't track it properly. But I remember the sudden emptiness beside me, like something that had been attached finally snapped free. I remember the panic that hit right after, the kind of panic that doesn't give you time to think. I turned and ran. I didn't run like someone who was late. I ran like someone who had left a door open in a house they were sure was empty, and then heard footsteps on the stairs. My feet slipped once on wet ground, and I caught myself and kept going, heart hammering so hard it hurt. I didn't look back, because I was afraid that if I looked back, I would see something that would follow me all the way home. When I reached my street, the world looked normal again in the worst possible way. Houses stood quietly. Lights glowed behind curtains. Everything seemed peaceful. And that made what had happened feel even more unreal, like it had been waiting specifically for me on that path. And now it was done. I got to my door, and there, right at the entrance, was the black cat. She was sleeping like she belonged there, curled up as if she had been keeping watch and decided her job was finished for the night. Her fur was dark and smooth, and she looked warm and alive and completely ordinary. I stood there, soaked from the rain, breathing too fast, staring at her the way you stare at something that might explain everything if it would just open its eyes. She didn't move. For a moment I wondered if she was even real. I wondered if she was part of it, whatever it was. I wondered if she had followed me from the school roof without me noticing, if she had always been closer than I thought. The air around the door felt heavy, as if the house behind it was holding its breath. People say you should settle before sunset, that you should be home before the light is gone. It's an old kind of advice, the kind adults say without thinking, like a habit passed down from a time when darkness meant more than it does now. I used to hear it and roll my eyes. That night, I didn't roll my eyes. That night, I went inside carefully, like the dark could slip in behind me if I wasn't fast enough. I locked the door. I checked it again. I moved through the house quietly, listening to small sounds that had never scared me before. The hum of electricity, the soft creak of the floor, the distant rush of water in pipes. When I finally lay down to sleep, I kept the lights off because I didn't want to see my own shadow on the walls. Even with my eyes closed, I felt like something could be standing in the room, close enough that I would feel its presence if I opened my eyes. My heart wouldn't slow down. My thoughts kept circling the same questions. Was that you or someone else? Was it even a who? Or was I forcing it into the shape of a person because that was easier than admitting it could be something that didn't have a name? I slept, but it wasn't restful. It was the kind of sleep where you don't really go anywhere. You just sink into a dark, shallow place and keep waking up without opening your eyes. Each time I drifted off, I dreamed of walking and never reaching home, with a second set of footsteps beside mine that never changed pace. When morning came, the sunlight looked innocent again. The world pretended nothing had happened. The fear didn't vanish, but it shrank enough for me to stand up and put on my clothes and act like a normal student. And when I reached school, my friends were there, the same as always. They talked, they laughed, they complained about homework. They asked me if I was okay, and I said yes, because what else do you say? How do you tell someone that you saw shadows that didn't belong to anything, that you ran from something you couldn't explain, that you think your own shadow tried to leave you? I sat in the classroom and looked out through those clear windows again, half expecting to see the black cat on the roof. I don't remember if she was there that day. Sometimes I think she was. Sometimes I think she wasn't. And that's what scared me more. Because if she wasn't there, then maybe she had finally come down from the roof. And if she was there, basking in the sun like nothing in the world could touch her, then maybe she had been watching me the whole time, waiting for the exact moment I would start noticing what was walking beside me. Either way, the day went on. We met again, like we always did. We lived inside the normal routine of school hours, bells, lessons, lunch breaks, and under it, like a thin crack under paint, the question stayed. Is that you? Or someone else? Story 6. If you've ever worked late at night, you know how weird time can feel. Hours stretch and shrink in the same breath, and the world starts to look paused, like everyone went home and you're the only person dumb enough to still be awake and moving. My name is Hector. I'm 22, and on weekends I work the night shift at a 24-hour convenience store. It isn't big. 4 narrow aisles you can barely pass through if 2 people meet in the middle. A long wall of refrigerators in the back that never stop humming. And a checkout island up front where the cashier pretty much lives until sunrise. That Friday I was working with Julia. She's the type who always looks half asleep and half annoyed, like nothing in the world is interesting enough to earn a real reaction. She gets distracted, she gets bored, she scrolls, she sighs, but we get along. We don't force conversation. If there's no manager watching, we let the night drift by without making it harder than it already is. I walked in right at 10 p.m. The air conditioning had already cooled the place down, and the store smelled like that burnt, stale coffee the evening shift always leaves behind. It was still warm in the pot, like somebody expected it to matter. From 10 to midnight, it was normal. The usual mini-rush before the cutoff. Groups of young people buying beer and hard seltzer, arguing about flavors, tossing bags of ice onto the counter like they were in a hurry to start having fun. A couple late commuters came in for energy drinks and chips. A guy in work boots bought cigarettes and didn't look up from his phone once. Nothing memorable. Just scanning barcodes, making change, listening to the automatic doors sigh open and closed. By the time midnight hit, the store emptied out like someone turned a knob and shut the world down. It wasn't even gradual. 1 second there were footsteps and voices and the beep-beep of the register, and then it was gone. The silence that followed felt heavy, like the air thickened. The only sound left was the constant electric hum from the refrigerator wall in the back. Even that noise wasn't comforting. It was just there, mechanical and endless, like a reminder that the store was still awake, even if the neighborhood wasn't. Julia sat behind the counter on her stool with her headphones on, shoulders relaxed, face blank, tapping at her phone. She didn't say a word. Since there were no customers, I decided to do inventory. If you wait until the last hour, it feels like punishment. If you do it when you're restless, at least it keeps your brain from sliding into that late-night fog where everything feels unreal. I grabbed the clipboard and started counting what we'd sold the most. Beer, ice, sodas. I wrote numbers, lined up a few messy stacks, faced the labels forward because the manager liked it that way. I told myself I'd do the rest later, but the truth is I knew I'd probably end up doing it anyway, just to kill time. By 2 a.m. I'd counted, and arranged everything that could be counted and arranged without turning the whole store upside down. The boredom was starting to gnaw at me. My stomach made that hollow sound it makes when it's past the point of politely asking for food. I walked back toward the little food area right next to the register. It was barely a station. Coffee machine, some sad paper cups, and a microwave that always looked like it had survived a war. I took my food out of my backpack, peeled off the plastic wrap, and pulled open the microwave door. Right then, the glass entrance doors flew open so hard they slammed against the stops. I froze with my dinner half in my hands. A man came in fast, like he'd shoved the doors more than opened them. He looked around 40, maybe a little older, but it was hard to tell because his face was strained in a way that made him seem older and younger at the same time. His eyes were wide, the kind of wide you don't fake. He wasn't smiling, wasn't drunk, wasn't confused. He looked terrified. He stepped inside, and then, weirdly, he kept moving backward like he didn't want to turn his back on the street. His gaze stayed locked on the darkness outside as if he expected something to sprint after him. He backed up until he bumped into the end of an aisle and stumbled, catching himself on a rack of chips. Then he moved deeper into the store, hunched like he wanted to fold himself smaller, and slipped into the aisle like he was looking for a place to disappear. My first thought was simple. He's being chased. Maybe a robbery, maybe a fight, maybe some random guy with a knife. This part of town isn't known for being dangerous, which is why we can stay open 24 hours without too much drama. But it's still 2 in the morning. You never know what kind of ideas someone will get when most people are asleep, and there are no witnesses. I set my food down on the counter and stepped closer to the register, keeping my voice steady. Loud enough for him to hear, not loud enough to make him panic more. "Hey," I called. "Are you okay? Do you need me to call the police?" For a second, he didn't answer. He stayed tucked behind the chips aisle, breathing hard, eyes still aimed toward the entrance like the doors might open again any second. Then he leaned his head out just enough for me to see his face. He was pale, not just tired pale. He looked drained, like the blood had pulled back into his body and left his skin cold. Sweat shined on his forehead and along his upper lip, even though the store was air-conditioned and the night outside was chilly. His mouth opened and his voice came out thin and shaky. "Yes," he said. "Yes, please." He swallowed like he was trying to force the words down. "Someone's following me," he added, and then he stopped. His eyes flicked to the door again. His face tightened like he'd almost said too much. It looked like there was another sentence he was about to say, something important, something that would make it all make sense. But he didn't. He just ducked back down and crouched lower in the aisle as if hiding could erase him. Behind me, Julia had taken her headphones off. I hadn't even heard her move, but when I looked over, she was watching the man with a serious expression, her boredom gone. She didn't ask questions. She didn't roll her eyes. She just nodded once, like we both understood this wasn't the time to debate what was real and what wasn't. She grabbed the landline phone from the register and dialed emergency services. Her voice dropped low, controlled, professional in a way I didn't expect from her. She explained that a man had come in scared, saying someone was following him. She gave the address, Then she listened, eyes on the entrance, and hung up. "They're sending a patrol to check the area," she told me. "They'll swing by?" That should have calmed me down, and a part of me did feel relief. In this neighborhood, there are usually patrol cars not far away, and just seeing police lights tends to make most trouble evaporate. If someone was chasing him, they'd probably run off as soon as they spotted a unit. All we had to do was wait. We told the man the police were coming. He seemed to understand because his shoulders dropped slightly, and he let out a breath like his lungs had been clamped shut. But he still didn't come out of the aisle. He stayed crouched, like stepping into the open would make him visible to something that could see through walls. I decided we should secure the front door. If someone was outside, I didn't want them just walking in. I grabbed the keys and started toward the entrance, already imagining myself locking it and flipping the sign to closed, even though technically we weren't supposed to. My hand was halfway up, ready to slide the bolt, when the whole night changed. A hard sound cracked above us like something heavy had slammed into the roof. It wasn't a normal bang. It was dry and sharp, the kind of noise that makes your body tense before your brain can label it. And then the lights went out. Not a flicker, not a dimming, just instant darkness, like someone snapped their fingers and erased the store. The fluorescent lights died, and with them the constant hum from the refrigerators. That part hit me almost more than the darkness. When you work nights, that humming becomes the background of reality. When it stops, you notice how silent the world can be. The store dropped into a quiet so complete, it felt like pressure in my ears. For a second, I couldn't move. I stood there with my keys in my hand, staring at where the entrance had been, my eyes useless. The only light left came from outside. Across the street, a sickly yellow glow filtered through the glass doors, weak but enough to paint the floor with long, warped shadows. The aisles stretched into black tunnels. The checkout island became a dark shape against darker space. Without thinking, I finished crossing the last steps and slammed the bolt into place. My hands were suddenly too sweaty for the metal. I heard Julia moving toward me, careful steps, her shoes whispering on the tile. "What the hell?" she whispered. I didn't answer because I didn't have one. Somewhere deeper in the store, the man started breathing hard again. It sounded louder now, amplified by the silence, a rough inhale, exhale, like he'd been running. His fears seemed to fill the space, making it smaller. Julia and I leaned toward the glass and tried to look out onto the street. It looked empty. No cars passing, no footsteps, just that lonely yellow light across the road and a wide stretch of darkness beyond it. But even though we didn't see anyone, the feeling hit almost immediately. Something in my chest tightened. Not like anxiety, not like a panic attack, more like a sudden instinct, ancient and physical. The certainty you get when you're being watched. Julia must have felt it too, because she stepped back at the same time I did. Both of us moving away from the glass without talking about it. It wasn't a decision. It was the way you pull your hand away from a hot stove before you even feel pain. We both pulled out our phones. We needed light, and we needed to know where the patrol was. The screens came on, bright in our faces, and I switched on my flashlight. Julia did the same. 2 narrow beams cut through the dark. Then we checked our signal. Nothing. No bars, no data, no internet, just dead, like the phones had been dropped into a place that didn't belong to them. Julia took a slow breath, trying to sound reasonable. "It's probably just a blackout," she said. "Like the whole block. It'll come back." I wanted to agree, I really did. But my brain grabbed onto the details, the things that didn't fit. "No," I said quietly. "We have emergency lights." I lifted my phone and aimed the flashlight toward the upper corners of the walls, where the small rectangular emergency units were mounted. We'd had blackouts before, quick ones during storms or maintenance. Those lights always came on, at least enough to keep the store from turning into a cave. Now they were dead, completely dead. "Someone cut it," I said, and even as I spoke the words, they sounded wrong. Too dramatic, too movie-like. But it was the only explanation that fit what I was seeing. We were still staring upward when a sound snapped through the store and erased every thought in my head. A metal door slammed somewhere in the back. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't the soft click of a door settling. It was the heavy, ugly crash of steel hitting a frame with force. The sound rolled down the aisles and bounced off the tile floor, making the space feel even emptier. It came from the storage room door. That door led to the back area and beyond that to an alley. By protocol, it stayed locked unless a supplier was unloading. At 2 a.m, there was no supplier. There was no reason for that door to move at all. Julia's fingers dug into my arm so hard it hurt. I didn't tell her to stop. I couldn't even look at her. My eyes were stuck on the darkness between the aisles, my flashlight beam trembling because my hand had started shaking. The man shot out from his hiding spot like a cornered animal. He ran straight toward the front doors and shoved at the glass with both hands, desperate. It didn't budge. The bolt held. He slammed again, harder, and then turned his head toward us, eyes wild, like he wanted to scream at me for locking it. But no sound came out. Only that panicked breathing, like his throat had tightened shut. I raised my phone higher, forcing the flashlight beam down the center aisle toward the storage room door. The light only reached part way, thinning as it traveled, but it was enough to touch the door frame at the far end. Something was there. At first, my brain tried to make it normal. A shadow. A person crouched, a jacket hanging wrong. But the shape didn't match anything my mind could categorize quickly. It was humanoid, yes, but wrong in the way a mannequin is wrong when you see it in the dark and mistake it for a real person. It was too tall, over 6 feet for sure, maybe closer to 7. Its head nearly reached the top of the frame. The proportions didn't look natural, like the limbs were just slightly too long and the torso slightly too narrow, and it moved, not walking, not stepping. It slid forward so slowly it was almost polite, inching out from the edge of the storage room door like it knew we were watching and wanted us to have time to understand what we were seeing. Julia screamed, the sound sharp enough to make my ear ring. The scream snapped me out of my paralysis like a slap. "Door," I said, though I'm not even sure who I was talking to. My brain had one clear goal: get out. I yanked my arm free from Julia's grip and lunged toward the lock. My hands were shaking so badly, the keys clattered, loud and stupid in the silent store. Metal on metal, a sound that felt like it could guide anything right to me. I jammed the key into the lock and missed. Tried again and missed again, my fingers clumsy like they didn't belong to me. Behind us, the man kept pushing at the glass, making it rattle in the frame, his fears spilling into the air. Finally, the key caught. I turned it hard. The lock clicked, and I shoved the door open with my shoulder. We burst out into the night together, the three of us tripping over the threshold, stumbling onto the sidewalk, and then running without thinking. We didn't stop until we reached the middle of the street, right beneath a circle of amber light. The cold hit me then, sharp and biting, but adrenaline made it feel distant, like the chill belonged to someone else. I spun around, breath tearing in my chest, and stared back at the store. The entire street was dark. Not just the store. The whole block looked dead. The blackness pressed in from both ends of the road. The convenience store behind us was a dark rectangle, its big windows reflecting almost nothing. We stayed under that light because it felt like the only safe place left. I know how that sounds, like light is some kind of shield. But in that moment, it wasn't superstition. It was instinct. The darkness beyond the lamp felt thick, like stepping into it would be stepping into deep water where something could grab your ankle. Julia stood close to me, so close her shoulder pressed into mine. She was shaking hard, teeth clicking, breathing fast. She didn't speak. Her eyes stayed fixed on the store doors. The man stood a couple feet away, bent over, hands on his knees, panting like he'd run for miles. He kept looking around in quick, jerky movements, as if he expected something to come rushing out of the dark from any direction. He muttered things under his breath, words I couldn't catch. A small, rational part of me tried to force a normal explanation. A break-in, a person in the back, a drug addict in the alley who'd slipped inside. Something. Anything that fit the rules of the world. But my stomach didn't believe it. The shape I'd seen by the storage room door didn't look like a person. And even if it had, none of this explained the total blackout, the dead phones, the way the air had felt heavy, like we'd stepped into a trap. The amber light above us flickered once, and a faint electrical hum vibrated through the metal pole. I still couldn't look away from the store. I waited for the doors to open. I waited to see that tall silhouette slide forward into the window to give me the final proof that we had to run, even if it meant throwing ourselves into the darkness. Nothing happened. The store stayed still. The doors stayed shut. The windows stayed black. Then I realized something, and the thought punched through me so hard it stole my breath. I couldn't hear the man anymore. A second ago, he'd been right there, panting, muttering, moving. Now there was nothing. No breathing, no shuffling, no voice. I turned my head fast, expecting to see him standing just outside the light, or maybe backing away toward the sidewalk. But the space where he'd been was empty. I scanned the edge of the amber circle, forcing my eyes into the shadows beyond it. I called out, louder than I meant to, asking where he went, telling him to come back into the light. My voice bounced off the closed storefronts and dark parked cars and came back to me thinner, like the street didn't want to hold sound. No answer. Julia grabbed my sleeve with both hands, like she thought if she let go, I might step into the dark after him. Her face was pale. Her eyes were glossy and wide. Before I could decide what to do, flashing blue and red lights spilled across the street, cutting through the darkness like someone had ripped open a curtain. Headlights swept over the pavement, over us, over the storefront. A patrol car pulled up and stopped a few yards from the entrance. Relief hit me so fast, my knees went weak. Julie and I ran toward the car before the officers were even fully out. Two cops stepped out, hands near their belts, flashlights already up scanning the area. They looked at our faces and immediately shifted into that focused mode people get when they see real fear. "What happened?" one of them asked. I tried to explain, but the words came out jagged. I told them a man ran in saying he was being followed. We called. Then the power cut out completely, and something was inside the store. I didn't know what to call it. I didn't want to say a monster, because I wanted them to take us seriously. But I also couldn't lie and say it was a person when I wasn't sure. Julia spoke too. Short sentences, shaking voice, confirming the blackout and the slam from the back and the shape at the storage door. The officers exchanged a look. One of them opened the back door of the patrol car and told us to get in, to calm down while they checked the store. We climbed into the back seat and shut the door behind us. The simple sound of the latch clicking made me feel safer than it should have. Through the windshield, I watched the two officers walk toward the store entrance, their flashlights painting white beams across the glass. They moved carefully, but not slowly, like they were trained to approach the unknown without freezing. They stepped inside. Only a few seconds passed, maybe less, and then a deep hum rolled through the air. It felt like the neighborhood itself took a breath. The power came back. The convenience store's fluorescent lights flickered and then snapped on, harsh and bright. At the same time, the streetlights up and down the road lit up one after another. The darkness retreated, like it had never been there. The shift from nightmare to normal was so sudden it made my head spin. Under the clean light, everything looked ordinary again. Asphalt, sidewalks, parked cars, sleepy buildings. The store windows reflected the street like usual. A couple of minutes later, the officers came back out. One walked up to the patrol car and leaned down to speak to us through the open front window. "It's empty," he said. "No one inside." My throat went dry. "Did you check the back?" "We checked everything," he said, firm but not unkind. "Aisles, bathrooms, storage room. Nothing. Doors locked." They asked us to come in with them anyway, to point out where we'd seen it, and make sure there weren't any blind spots. Julia looked like she wanted to refuse, but we went. Staying in the patrol car felt safe, but it didn't answer anything. Walking back into the store with the bright lights on felt wrong, like we were stepping into the same place but in a different reality. The tiles were clean and glossy under the fluorescence. The snack bags hung in neat rows. The refrigerators hummed again like nothing had happened. My half-uncovered food still sat on the counter beside the microwave, exactly where I'd left it. Plastic peeled back like I'd simply been interrupted by a normal customer. We walked every aisle. We opened the bathroom doors. We checked behind the storage room door. One officer shined his flashlight into corners that didn't need a flashlight anymore, like he was doing it more for us than for him. There was nothing. No sign of a struggle. No broken lock. No footprints. No smell. No blood. Nothing out of place. The police stayed parked outside for a couple of hours after that, just in case. Julia and I sat behind the checkout island, too wired to relax and too tired to talk. She barely spoke at all. Her eyes kept sliding toward the back of the store like she expected that metal door to slam again. I didn't want to say what I was thinking out loud because once you name something, it becomes more real. I kept replaying that slow, sliding movement at the edge of my flashlight beam. The height, the way it didn't rush, didn't hide, didn't act like a person trying to break in. Like it wasn't afraid of being seen. Before the officers finally left to continue their rounds, we told them about the man, too. The one who'd come in first. The one who'd disappeared outside under the light. They took notes, asked what he looked like, asked if we knew his name, if he'd said anything else. We didn't have much to give them. The officers said they could search the area, but if he ran off, there wasn't much they could do unless he'd committed a crime or someone reported him missing. After that, time crawled. The last part of the shift felt endless. Dawn took forever to show up. When the sky finally began to lighten, it didn't feel comforting. It just made everything look more exposed. At 5 a.m, our shift ended. The replacement crew arrived looking fresh and half awake, carrying their coffees like normal people starting a normal day. Julia and I gave them a cleaned-up version of what happened. We said there was a blackout. We said a strange guy came in, panicked, and ran off. We didn't mention the shape in the back, not because we were trying to hide it, but because saying it out loud felt like it would make us sound insane. We grabbed our backpacks and left. Outside, the morning air was cold and sharp, and the sky had that early gray-blue color that makes the world look washed clean. Julia and I walked toward the bus stop without talking. Our footsteps sounded too loud in the quiet morning. Every now and then, I glanced back at the store, but I didn't let myself stare. A few minutes into the walk, the adrenaline finally drained out of me. When it did, my brain started doing what it always does after fear, replaying details, organizing them, checking them against reality. It's like the mind can't accept pure chaos, so it tries to make a story that fits, and then something clicked. It was small, so small it almost didn't register, like a pebble caught in a shoe. But the second I noticed it, my whole body stopped, as if someone had grabbed me. I turned around slowly, looking back down the street toward the store. I remembered exactly where we'd run, how we'd ended up in the middle of the road. I remembered the amber light above us, the circle it made on the pavement, how we'd stayed inside it like it was the last safe place on earth. My eyes moved to the sidewalk across from the store, searching for the pole, the lamp, the fixture, anything. There was nothing. No streetlight pole planted in the concrete, no overhead lamp, no light attached to the building across the road. No sign that there had ever been a light source there at all. Just an empty stretch of sidewalk and the plain front of a dark building. My stomach twisted into a hard knot, and for a second I felt like the ground shifted under my feet. 'Cause I remembered that light perfectly. The way it hummed, the way it flickered, the way it painted the world in amber and made the darkness outside it look deeper. We'd been standing under something, and whatever it wasn't a street lamp. Story 7. Keep thinking about Mrs. Muller's face when she saw me in her basement. I keep seeing it like a still image that won't leave my head. It was only 2 seconds, maybe less, but it keeps looping. The way her eyes went from me to the pencil case on the floor. The way her expression changed and then smoothed back out. The way she decided what she was looking at was normal. I don't know why that part sticks. It's not the worst moment I've had. It's not even the closest call, if I'm being honest. But it's the one my brain keeps returning to like it's trying to solve something. Like there's a lesson in those 2 seconds. And I missed it the first time. I'm writing this down because I need it out of my head. I'll probably delete it. That's what I tell myself anyway. But I've been telling myself a lot of things lately. I do pest control. Green Shield. The trucks with the cartoon ant. You've seen us in parking lots and neighborhoods. We're the people who show up with a service bag and a sprayer and a clipboard, and we're gone before you remember what we look like. I've been doing it for 3 years. I'm good at it. I'm steady. I'm polite. I'm quick. I don't make a mess. I don't cut corners. That part is true. The part I need to tell you about's the pencil case. Okay. I need to back up because none of this makes sense without the way this job works. Pest control sounds small when you say it. Bugs, mice, ants, a few minutes with a spray wand, a few traps, and you're out. People think it's like calling a plumber. You point at the problem, and they fix it. But think about what it actually means. A stranger shows up at your door, and you hand him the code to your garage like it's nothing. You give him the alarm pin. You tell him your work schedule, your travel plans, which doors stick, which windows don't lock unless you jiggle them. You show him the crawl space access and the attic hatch and the basement stairs and the closet where the water heater is. You tell him, casually, that you won't be home on Thursdays, and you just leave. And he's in your house. An hour. Sometimes longer if it's a big place. Every room, cabinets, baseboards, utility areas, basement, attic, the places you don't even like going yourself. And you don't think about it because he has a polo shirt with a logo on it. He has shoe covers. He has a clipboard. He says no problem and have a great day, and I'll lock up behind me. When you put a uniform on a person, you stop seeing them as a person. That's not an insult. It's just what people do. It's how they survive daily life. If you really thought about what it means to let strangers into your home, you'd never open the door for anyone. On Tuesdays, I have 7 houses. West side of town, quarterly treatments. My manager, Kyle, says I'm the most consistent tech he's ever had. He says it like it's a compliment, and I nod like it's nothing. 3 years, 0 complaints. 5 stars on every survey. People write little comments about how respectful I am and how I explain things clearly and how their dog likes me. Kyle doesn't know why I'm so consistent. He thinks it's because I'm organized. He thinks it's because I like the work. He thinks it's because I take pride in doing a good job. I do take pride in it, just not the way he means. Tuesdays start early. First stop is the Hendersons at 7:45. Well, it's just Doris now. Frank died 2 years ago, maybe 3. The house still feels like him, though. Old photos, old tools in the garage, that smell of aftershave and dust that doesn't go away. Doris does this thing that makes my stomach tighten every time. And I'm not even sure why it bothers me, because half my route is like this in some way. She writes her garage code on a Post-it and sticks it on the meter box outside the house. Outside, where anyone can see it. Last year it was 4770. This year she changed it to 4771, like she really did something. Like Danger is a polite person who respects effort. She's in Arizona right now, Scottsdale, every winter. The house has been empty since November, and it smells like it. Not dirty, just unused. Stale air mixed with whatever plug-in she left going. Fake vanilla. The kind that clings to curtains and makes you think of waiting rooms. I do the standard treatment. Baseboards, door frames, window trim. Bifenthrin at the right dilution, measured, logged. Check the stations in the basement. Check the garage corners. Look for spider webs in the eaves. Normal work. The kind of work that makes you invisible. Then I go to the kitchen. Doris once told me, without me asking, that she fills her Brita pitcher before she leaves so it's ready when she gets back. She said it like it was a small act of kindness for her future self. So it sits there on the second shelf in the fridge for months, waiting. A clear pitcher of water that hasn't moved since fall. I keep a gray pencil case in my service bag. Staples brand. $3. Nothing you'd look at twice. It's the kind of cheap zip case students use for pens and erasers. If you saw it on someone's desk, you wouldn't even remember it 5 minutes later. Inside it, I keep small tools I can't keep in the main pouch. Nothing that would shock you. Tiny things. Things that fit in a pocket. Things people assume belong in a text bag. There's also a small amber glass bottle with no label, the kind essential oils come in. It looks harmless because it looks like something from a health store. It looks like a mistake someone forgot in the bottom of a bag. I take the pitcher out, unscrew the lid like I'm checking it, and I add a few drops from the bottle. Just a few. The liquid disappears instantly, like it was never there. Then I put it back exactly the way it was. Same shelf. Same angle. Handle turns slightly left because that's how Doris leaves it. If you're waiting for me to tell you what's in the bottle, I'm not going to. Not because I'm trying to sound dramatic. Not because I'm trying to tease you, because the name doesn't matter. You'd have to look it up. You'd start thinking about it in the wrong way. You'd imagine the wrong kind of harm. What I do doesn't leave someone on a floor. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't kick down doors in the middle of the night. It changes things quietly. It moves through someone's life like a draft in a room. People blame themselves for it. People call it stress. People call it age. People call it bad luck. And most of the time, nothing happens at all. At least not right away. Some houses get nothing. Some people get nothing. The point has never been speed. Second stop is the Quans at 8:45, and this is where my job stops feeling like my job and starts feeling like something else. Not because of them as people. They're normal. They pay on time. Their house is clean. Their kids leave backpacks in the hallway like every other family. But they have a dog, Biscuit, a German shepherd. Big, smart eyes. He used to go crazy when I showed up, barking like he was protecting the whole planet. Then I started keeping Milkbone minis in the truck. Yellow box. Cheap. I'd toss him one when I walked in, and he learned my smell, my voice, my rhythm. Now he just follows me around with his tail going the whole time, like I'm part of the Tuesday routine. I like that dog more than I like most of the people on my route. I know how that sounds, but it's true. Biscuit is honest. He wants what he wants, and he shows it. He doesn't pretend. Eric, the husband, works upstairs. Some kind of coding job. He wears these huge Sony headphones that probably cost more than my truck payment, and he sits up there all day in his own world. completely sealed off. If I drop something downstairs, if a cabinet door slams, if Biscuit barks once, he doesn't react. The house could be on fire, and I honestly don't know if he'd hear it. Jenny drops the kids at school and doesn't get back until around 9:30. That means there's a window, almost an hour sometimes, where it's just me and Biscuit and a man who can't hear me. Jenny's toothbrush is what I do at the Kwans. I know what that sounds like. Just let me explain in plain terms before your brain jumps to the worst version. They have one of those electric toothbrushes on the bathroom counter, the kind with round heads that pop off. 2 handles in the holder. Blue is Eric's, pink is Jenny's. They're the same model, same brand, just different colors. The kind of thing you buy because the store tells you it's good for you. I take the pink one, and I swap it with an identical replacement from my bag. Same everything. You couldn't tell. Even if you stood there staring, you'd just see a pink toothbrush handle in a holder. What I do to the replacement isn't visible unless you know to take it apart. And most people don't take apart things that already work. That's another rule of life. If it turns on, if it hums, if it looks clean, you assume it's fine. The old handle goes into a sealed container. I don't throw it away in their trash because that's sloppy. I don't keep it because that's stupid. I get rid of it later at a place I chose ahead of time. A different place every few months because patterns are what get people caught. Why her and not him? I don't know. That's the honest answer, and I know it's not a satisfying one. People want a reason. People want a motive they can hold in their hands like a tool. They want anger or revenge or money or love. Sometimes it's none of that. Sometimes it's like arranging objects on a shelf until they look right. You nudge something half an inch, and suddenly the whole row makes sense. You can't explain why it's correct, only that it is. It's a terrible comparison for what I'm talking about, but it's the closest thing I can reach without lying. Third stop is Dale Palmer, and Dale isn't relevant except that I don't do anything at his house. That part matters. Not every house gets something. If you do it every time, that's a pattern. If you make yourself predictable, you make yourself visible. Dale stands in his kitchen talking to me about his prostate like it's the weather. Every visit. PSA numbers, urologist appointments, insurance billing. I nod. I spray baseboards. I check the station behind the water heater. I leave. Dale is fine. Dale is boring. Dale is not part of my private list. Then comes the Mullers. 11:15 appointment. Kathy Muller. She does puzzles, those 1,000-piece ones, and she has a cat named Pretzel. I'm telling you the cat's name because it's a detail my mind kept. Like the mind keeps weird details right before something goes wrong. 4 months ago, I was in her basement doing the foundation treatment. It was one of those basements that looks finished from the stairs and then gets more unfinished the farther you walk. Framed walls that stop halfway, exposed concrete, boxes stacked in corners, a dehumidifier that runs constantly. The air cool and dry in a way that makes your skin feel tight. I had the crawl space access panel pulled off, and I had my pencil case out, open. On the floor next to me, zipper spread, the little items visible, the amber bottle, a few small tools, a couple of parts in tiny plastic bags, things that, if you know what you're looking at, don't belong in a pest control kit. things that don't match the story a uniform is supposed to tell. In 3 years, Kathy Muller had never come downstairs while I was working. Not once. She'd always stayed upstairs, sometimes calling down a polite question like, "Everything okay?" And I'd answer, "All good," and that would be it. But that day, Pretzel knocked a frame off a shelf upstairs. Glass broke. Kathy heard it and came down fast, probably thinking something heavy fell or a pipe burst or the cat got hurt. And there I was, crouched on the floor like a thief, even though I wasn't stealing anything. Pencil case open like a mouth that didn't close in time. She stopped on the last step and said, "Oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt." I said something normal. I said something like, "No worries, I'm just checking the stations." My voice sounded normal to me. My face probably did the right expression. I've had a lot of practice at looking harmless. Then her eyes moved. They went from my face to the pencil case. She looked right at it. This is the moment that keeps waking me up at night. It wasn't dramatic. She didn't gasp. She didn't freeze. She didn't say, "What is that?" She didn't say, "Why do you have that?" She didn't say anything. She looked for 2 seconds, maybe less, and then she smiled and said, "You guys are so thorough." Like she meant it, like she genuinely appreciated it. Then she walked back upstairs to deal with the broken glass, leaving me alone in the basement with my open case and the feeling that I had just been given something I didn't deserve. That's it. That's what happened. 2 seconds. A woman saw something that should have been strange, and her brain decided it was boring because I'm the pest control guy, and pest control guys have stuff. Bags and cases and tools. That's the whole point of the uniform. It gives people a reason not to think. You don't wonder what your mail carrier has in their bag. You don't ask what's in the cable guy's van. You don't question the locksmith's tool roll. They're not people to you in that moment. They're a function, a service, a moving piece of a day. I'm nobody to them. And that's the thing. That's exactly the thing. I eat lunch at a park off Devonshire. Same bench every time. It's become a routine so consistent, it almost feels like a rule. I watch ducks on the pond and eat whatever sandwich I threw together in the morning. There's a jogger who runs past most Tuesdays at the same time. Ponytail, AirPods, running tights, steady pace like she's metronome trained. Not a client. I notice her schedule, which is something I probably shouldn't have done, but I did. My brain notices patterns the way other brains notice faces. It's not even a choice most of the time. And no, I'm not going to do anything about it. The route is the route. You don't add stops because you're curious. That's sloppy. And sloppy is how things end. The afternoon is more houses, more doors opening, more people giving me access to their private spaces without really seeing me. Arsenault on Birchwood has a humidifier with a water tank that sits in the corner of his living room like a small aquarium. It's easy to reach when he's not paying attention, but lately he's been hanging around more, so I haven't touched it. The Chens are a situation I'm skipping for now because the wife changed her work-from-home schedule, and I need to understand the new pattern before I step back into that house with the wrong assumption. You adapt. You don't guess. Last stop is the Garcias on Whitfield, and I don't like talking about them because I actually like them. Luis coaches his kids' baseball team. Adriana brought me tamales last Christmas, wrapped in foil with a little ribbon, like she was giving me a gift instead of leftovers. They were the best tamales I've ever had. Their backyard has a trampoline and a big swing set. The kids are 7 and 9. They wave at me like I'm a friendly neighbor, like I'm part of the neighborhood's immune system. I have their door code, their alarm code. I know what days the kids have swim lessons. I know their dog's medication schedule because Adriana wrote it on a whiteboard on the fridge. That's the job. That's what the job gives you, eh? So I did my normal service. I locked up, and I drove back. Clocked out at 3:14. 1 minute early. I think the reason I'm writing this is because something about me doesn't make sense to me anymore, and that's new. I've always felt like I understood myself. The why never felt complicated. It was never a story I had to explain. It was just something I did, quietly, carefully, like brushing my teeth or checking my mirrors before changing lanes. The pencil case, the little bottle, the swaps, the tiny changes. Being there in someone's kitchen with their dog leaning against my leg while the husband sits upstairs 20 feet away hearing nothing. Being the guy with the clipboard, being the safe stranger. I don't look these people up afterward. I don't Google them. I don't check obituaries. I don't stalk social media. I don't want the after image of their lives in my head. I don't want to know what happens, not because I'm scared, because it would make it too real, too personal, too messy. And this is important. I honestly don't know if anything has happened to any of them. Some of what I do is slow. Some of it might never do anything at all. Sometimes the world does the heavy lifting on its own, and all I did was stand near the wheel for a second. That's not the point. It was never the point. But after the Mueller thing, after she looked straight at that case and didn't see it, something shifted in me. It should have felt like relief, right? She looked. She didn't notice. Good. That means I'm invisible. That means the system is working the way it's supposed to work. That's the whole game. You are the man in the polo shirt. You are the clipboard. You are the service window between 8:45 and 9:30. You are the person no one remembers describing to the police, because no one thinks the bug guy matters. But something about the way she said, "You guys are so thorough," messed with me. Something about her voice when she said it. Like she meant it. Like she was honestly grateful. Like she thought I was doing a good job. And I am doing a good job. Just not the one she thinks. That's what I can't stop thinking about. Not the risk. Not the near miss. The praise, the kindness, the casual trust. The way people give you their whole house, their codes, their routines, and then they thank you for being careful. The drive home is Route 9. Windows down if it's not raining. Whatever classic rock station Kyle likes to leave on in the truck. Tom Petty, Fleetwood Mac, commercials that all sound the same. At 3:20, the light is always good this time of year. Everything gold like it's been lightly painted. 15 minutes of that, and then I'm home, and the day is done. It doesn't feel like what you'd think. That's what I'm trying to say. That's why I started typing in the first place. Everyone assumes it would feel heavy, dark, like you'd step out of a house and your hands would shake, like your heart would race, like you'd see ghosts in the rearview mirror. They imagine guilt like a weight you can measure. For me, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like driving home. It feels like turning onto my street and seeing the same lawns and the same mailboxes and the same porch lights. It feels like taking my boots off and setting my keys down and washing my hands, because that's what you do after work. It feels like the day folding itself up neatly, like a uniform hung back in the closet. And the worst part is this. Sometimes, when I'm lying in bed and I think about Kathy Muller's face, I don't feel fear. I feel seen. Not seen for what I am, because she didn't see that. She didn't see anything. But seen as a person doing a job. Seen as someone who is trying. Seen as someone worth thanking. And that's what I can't make sense of. Because if a woman can look straight at the open mouth of my pencil case and decide it's nothing, then what else can people look at every day and decide is nothing? How much of the world is built on that? How much of me is built on that? I keep hearing her voice in my head, light and confident, like she was talking about something simple, like she wasn't standing over a crack in the floor. You guys are so thorough. And in my memory, when she turned away and walked back upstairs, it wasn't the broken glass I thought about. It was the sound of her footsteps leaving me behind, alone in the basement. Oh, with the pencil case still open, and my hands still, for once, not moving.